Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Cora or Azure, whatever fits your fancy, and today we're just going to be having a nice laid-back paint with me session, a series I'm deeming be called Brush and Banter, while I work on this illustration of Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase. A bit of an angsty piece that I was inspired by while rereading the series. This is one of those pieces that I'm painting purely for fun, no deadlines, no projects, just indulging in something that makes me happy. And honestly, as a character designer and illustrator, I think it's so important to step away from your own world sometimes and just jump into a world you already love. I spend a lot of time creating my own stories, building my own characters, and while that's amazing, there's something really refreshing about revisiting a story that first inspired me. For me, Percy Jackson is that story. It's been one of my favorite series since I was a kid, and it's honestly played a huge role in shaping the way I think about character dynamics, world building, and storytelling as a whole. So while I paint, I just want to chat about how much this series has meant to me, how it was the first story that made me feel truly seen, how it influenced my love for fantasy and character work, and even how revisiting it as an adult has given me new perspective on my own writing and storytelling. So let's rewind a bit. I picked up The Lightning Thief when I was around 11 or 12, basically the same age as Percy in the first book. And at the time, I didn't realize how much it was going to stick with me. But looking back, I think it was the first book that truly shaped a lot about what I love about being an artist. And oh boy, don't even get me started on all my old Percy Jackson fan art I made as a kid. That's some deep dark waters right there. I grew up disabled, queer, and neurodivergent, and that wasn't something I often saw reflected in the books I read. But then there was Percy, a kid with ADHD and dyslexia, who wasn't just getting by despite those things, but who was actually special because of them. The way Rick Riordan wove that into the world, making it a core part of his demigod identity, was honestly life-changing for me. It reframed the way I saw myself. And then, of course, there was Nico D'Angelo, my first queer character in media. I don't even think I had the language yet to fully understand why I connected with his story so much, but I just did. The isolation, the struggle with identity, the need to find a place where you truly belong, it all resonated in a way I couldn't quite put into words yet. Looking back, I know it meant everything to me. And that's what I love about Riordan's writing. Wow, say that 5 times. Every character feels real. They all have struggles that go beyond their quest or their powers. And it's not just about saving the world, it's about growing up, figuring out who you are, and finding people who accept you for that. And that's the kind of storytelling that really sticks with you, no matter how old you are. There is a reason so many people, despite their age, reread these types of stories. I all know, you know what other series I'm referring to, but we aren't going into that today. What's been really cool about this past year is that I actually got to revisit the series again, but this time with my little siblings. They're around the same age I was when I first read Percy Jackson, and it's been this really full circle moment to read it with them and watch them fall in love with the characters just like I did. It's reminded me of how timeless a good story is. Even though I know everything that's going to happen, reading through their eyes, seeing them react to certain moments, watching them make their own predictions, it's just so fun. It's been this perfect mix of nostalgia and rediscovery, and I think it's made me appreciate the books even more now than I did when I was little. And what's even wilder is that now in the newer books, Percy himself is heading into college, and I'm over here about to graduate college, and it just feels like everything's come full circle. Like, I grew up with these characters, and now they're growing up too. It's such a surreal, beautiful thing to experience as a longtime fan. My siblings and I are done with the first series, and I already plan on introducing them to the Heroes of Olympus next. And honestly, I can't wait to see how they react to some of the big twists coming up, because even though I know they're coming, they still hit, you know? That's the mark of a really well-written story, I think. And speaking of things that hit, Percy and Annabeth's dynamic. Easily one of my favorite duos in fiction. From the very start, they've had this perfect balance of respect, competitiveness, and and oh my gosh, I can't say it, and admiration for each other. Annabeth keeps Percy in check. Percy brings out this lighter side of Annabeth, and together they just work. It never feels forced, it never feels one-sided. It's just a natural progression of two people who challenge, love, and support each other in equal measure. And okay, maybe I love Percy as a character because he's a Leo, and well, I'm a Leo. He's a Percy. But in all seriousness, Percy has always been one of my favorite protagonists. Heck, I think I even did a whole high school freshman essay on this man in my literature class. He's snarky, loyal to a fault, and he has that I didn't ask for this attitude, but at the end of the day, he always does what's right, even when it's the hardest choice. He's never some perfect, all-powerful chosen one, despite his ungodly power, no pun intended. And holding that thought, pause, my camera died while I was painting Annabeth and didn't even notice. So that's a tragedy, I'm so sorry. He's just a kid trying his best, and that's what makes him so compelling. One thing I've really been thinking about while rereading this series, especially the second series, is how much it's influenced the way I want to handle characters in my own comic. Like, it's one thing to have a good plot or a well-built world, but what makes a story stick with people, I believe, is the characters. The way they interact, how their personalities shine through in the smallest moments, their struggles feel real even in a fantasy setting, that's what makes a story memorable. What I love about Percy Jackson is that even though it's based on Greek mythology, stories that have been told for thousands of years, Riordan makes every character feel like his version. He takes these well-known figures and breathes new life into them, making them feel fresh, distinct, and personal. They're not just mythological names slapped onto a modern setting, and that's something I want to do with my own world building. My comic might have elements that are inspired by fantasy and mythology, but I want each character to feel completely theirs, with struggles, flaws, and personalities that make them more than just their archetypes. With my comic, I think a lot about how I want my characters' personalities to come through in their interactions. Not just in what they say, but in how they say it. How they react to things, how their struggles shape the way they approach the world and the people around them. My characters, which you will see a lot very soon, Kainwyn and Melora, for example, they have completely different ways of thinking, and that tension is part of what makes their dynamic so interesting. Kainwyn's guarded, instinctively wary of others, while Melora is more open but has her own deep ties to the world she's trying to protect. For me, I don't think it's just about making them likable, it's about making them real. And Percy Jackson has been such a huge inspiration in learning how to do that. I also think a lot about how Riordan balances humor in deep emotional moments. One second you're laughing at some ridiculous joke, and the next you're getting hit with a line that absolutely wrecks you. And that's something I want to carry into my own storytelling, because that balance makes characters feel alive. And I think that's another thing about strong character writing. Even though it's a book, you can see these characters. You don't need a drawing of Percy to know he's got that constant, I just did something mildly illegal but for good reason energy. You don't need an illustration of Annabeth to know she has that calculating, ready for anything stance. The descriptions, the dialogue, the way they interact, it all paints a clear picture without needing an actual image. That's something I think about a lot as an illustrator. So much of what I do is taking words and turning them into visual storytelling. And honestly, that only works when the writing itself is strong. If a character is written well, you don't have to guess how they should look. You just know. The way they stand, the clothes they wear, even their posture. It all ties into their personality and story. And maybe the way you see the characters are different than how I see them, but I think that adds something really beautiful about reading a story and developing your own perception on how a character looks. It almost adds that element of your own personal touch to the story. Some characters just stick with you forever because of how well their personality is reflected in their design. Like, take Percy, his messy hair, sea-colored eyes, that I don't care, but I actually care a lot attitude, it all fits. And I think no matter what version you see him as, the traits are still there. He's a kid who's constantly thrown into chaos, but still rolls with it. You look at him and immediately get casual but ready to fight a god at any moment vibes. Annabeth, the Yankees cap, the practical yet battle-ready vibe, her stormy gray eyes. Her design tells you exactly who she is before she even says a word. Nico D'Angelo, you know he's the broody child of Hades before he even speaks. The all-black clothes, the dark circles, the skull ring. It's how they act that I believe shapes who you think they look like. Now, here's what I find really fascinating and interesting. Because while books rely on descriptions to build a character, in comics and animation, you don't have that luxury. You have to show who they are instantly. You can't write a paragraph about how a character is nervous. You have to show it through their body language. The way they fidget, the way their shoulders tense up, how they avoid eye contact. That's why expressions, movements, and even small details matter. Like, think about how Percy moves. He's quick, impulsive, always leaning forward like he's ready to run or fight. Annabeth, she's more calculated, more steady, always in control. Those small things tell you so much about a character without a single word. This is why animation fascinates me too. Because even the smallest gesture can tell a story. A well-timed smirk, a hesitant step back, a character gripping their weapon a little tighter. It all adds depth, and that's something I'm thinking a lot about with my comic. I want my characters' designs, movements, and expressions to carry as much weight as their dialogue. So, all this to say, this series has meant a lot to me and my own growth with my own characters and story building. It shaped my love for storytelling, character dynamics, and fantasy worlds. And painting Percy and Annabeth today has just been a really nice way to reflect on that and just to debrief with myself about my own process. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Who's your favorite Percy Jackson character? Did this series mean as much to you as it did for me? And let's talk about it. And if you haven't read it yet, seriously, what are you waiting for? Thanks for hanging out with me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!